What's up, Captains? Now, before we dive into today's conversation with Dr. Latt Mansor, a word from our sponsors. So first and foremost, this episode is brought to you by HVMN and their new product, Ketone-IQ. This is what Dr. Latt and I are going to be talking about for a large part of this episode. And I'm glad that we finally got to talk about this on a podcast because I've been obsessed with this stuff for the past month now. I take a shot in the morning. So what this is exogenous ketones. So I won't go too in depth into it because that's what this whole episode is about. But anyways, I take a shot first thing in the morning while I'm fasted, and it provides extreme mental clarity. And lately I've been combining it with some nootropics, which we're going to talk about soon. But yeah, shot first thing in the morning, fantastic for mental clarity. And I take 2 shots as a pre-workout. Really, really good for endurance. I talked to Latt on this interview that I took some Ketone-IQ before a run. And if you guys know me, I almost never run. And I ran the farthest I've ever ran. I ran about 7 miles and I just didn't get tired. I just felt so freaking good on this stuff. And again, while fasted. So this stuff is amazing. To get the hookup and to try a bottle for yourself, head over to hvmn.com. Use code CaptainMorgan10. That will save you 10% on the best exogenous ketones that you can possibly get. Next up, this podcast is brought to you by Nootopia. This is one of my favorite products of theirs. This is the Zamner juice. This is a spray, sublingual spray that you spray underneath your tongue, let it sit there for a few minutes, then swallow. It's a very fast acting neurotransmitter booster. And so I'll read you some of the ingredients. It's got GABA, L-theanine, omnipept, kava, a little bit of caffeine, guarana, huperzine A. So fantastic for verbal fluency, for social situations, for increasing an overall state of positivity and calmness, especially. So that stuff is amazing. I carry that in my fanny pack. And yes, I wear fanny packs now. And I can just take it out, do a few squirts anytime I feel like I need that extra little boost. It's amazing. And you'll see us using that on this podcast as well. To get the hookup on any of Nootopia's products, which are 100% customized to you. So before you even order, you fill out a form saying what supplements are you currently taking, what's your diet like, how is your sleep, how much energy you're looking to have, how much focus, and you can tell them exactly what you need. And they formulate each batch specific to your neurobiology. This stuff is amazing. So to get the hookup on any Nootopia products, head over to nootopia.com/Taylor, and that will get you an exclusive discount on these customizable nootropics. And I'm telling you guys, that combined with the Ketone-IQ is a game changer. I talked about this on an earlier podcast that I hooked both companies up together. So there might be some potential collaboration coming in the future, which I'm super excited about. Next up, this podcast is brought to you by Lambs, this EMF blocking beanie that I've got on right now. And it's amazing. I just flew into Minneapolis yesterday. So I'm here at my buddy Phil's house. You can see these really cool red lights. His whole house is red light, no artificial blue light, which is amazing. But anyways, back to Lambs. I travel with this all the time. I also wear their shirt and their underwear. So when I'm in that middle tube, 30,000 feet above the air, and everybody's trying to find the weak Wi-Fi signal, trying to use their cell phones, there's a lot of Wi-Fi in there. I measured it on my EMF meter. It's all the way up to 3 hertz plus. And I feel protected because I've got on my Lambs beanie, their shirt, their underwear. So I'm protected. All the good parts are covered, and it blocks 99% of EMF radiation. So to get the hookup on anything from Lambs, head over to getlambs.com and enter code CaptainMorgan. So you can protect your $1 billion supercomputer, all of your vital organs, and your balls from the effects of oxidative stress. So again, head over to getlambs.com, enter code CaptainMorgan. And last, but certainly not least, on the same topic of EMFs, this episode is brought to you by WaveBlock. You get an exclusive discount from being a listener of the Captain's Lifestyle podcast. You get 20% off anything from WaveBlock. They are EMF protection stickers that they make for iPhones as well as AirPods. So I'm sure you're familiar by now that your phone emits a ton of radiation, especially if you're using 5G and Wi-Fi combined. It's radiating it constantly. Even if it's on airplane mode, Yes, airplane mode reduces the amount of EMFs, but you're still getting some. So now I use the wave block sticker and it just drops that even lower. So to get the hookup on anything from wave block, head over to waveblock.com, enter code Captain Morgan. Again, that will save you 20% for being a listener of the Captain's Lifestyle podcast. With all that being said, let's dive into today's interview with Dr. Latt Mansor. So we've got some Ketone-IQ here. First off, we've got Latt, which I'm going to introduce properly here soon, but I'm just going to...
The Ketone-IQ is the start.
I'm going to get my brain right. I've got some Nectar X in here, which is a Bioptimizer's Newtopia product, mixing this with the Ketone-IQ, which there may be a potential collaboration happening between HVMN and Newtopia, which I am stoked about. So let's get some of this too. Have you had Zamner?
No, what is this?
This is just a spray you put under your tongue. Really good for verbal fluency and like just a overall feeling of calmness, and really good. I take it before my podcasts or social situations. Yeah, good stuff. Cool.
Okay.
So yeah, we're filming this in Venice Beach.
Yes, we are.
And we're both from Northern California.
Yes.
We just happened to be here at the same time. So yeah, we met at the Metabolic Health Summit in Santa Barbara. I didn't know HVMN was going to be there, and it was serendipitous.
Yeah.
I
mean, we didn't decide to go to MHS until I think a month and a half out, when our CEO Michael Brand asked, "Hey, Latt, as a research lead, do you think we can present at MHS?" I said, we've got our $6 million grant with DoD, and we've got some data, and we can present, but we're going to get some approval from DoD. We got some, with our collaborators, HMC, and then I reached out to MHS, Victoria Field, and then they're like, "Yeah, come over. These are all the details. Let's sort out the logistics." And the team sort of like put everything together, and then we have a booth, and I got to present our data for like a whole hour. So that was really nice, and also meeting all these new people, meeting you guys who have been working with us, as partners, as affiliates. To meet in person is always much better.
Yeah, we had a podcast scheduled for like 2 days ago, and then I saw you at the event. I was like, let's just do it in person.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a proper introduction. Let's read this off here. So, I'm sitting here with Dr. Latt Mansor, and he is a physiology and metabolism expert. He earned his PhD in ketosis, correct?
In cardiovascular disease, and so metabolism of type 2 diabetic heart in hypoxia.
Okay, wow, all right. At the University of Oxford, where his thesis work was related to hypoxia, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. He got his master's of biotechnology from Columbia University, which has a fantastic campus.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
It's elevated from the rest of the city.
Yeah, it's great. And bachelor's with honors of biotechnology at the University of Nottingham in England. His previous experience combines healthcare startups, pharmaceutical clinical trial operations, and healthcare consulting. Now at HVMN, he leads all research and science efforts across the company and is the principal investigator for a $6 million military contract with the Special Forces. That's quite a lot.
That's quite an introduction. Now that you say it all out loud, I feel the pressure.
A lot of guests say that. They're like, wow, when I actually hear everything, it's like, wow. So yeah, you're doing a lot, and I'm really excited to talk about the talk you gave about the contract that you have with Special Forces, because myself being a former Marine, that's super interesting. And some of the preliminary research that you unveiled at the Metabolic Health Summit was really interesting on how it can increase performance. And you're working with them specifically at altitude, correct? So talk to us a little bit about that, about the contract and what you guys are doing with them.
Sure. So it started off with phase 1. So it's an STTR where phase 1 we use ketone ester or exogenous ketone.
Actually, first off, sorry to cut you off. Before we get into that, let's first define what is ketones are, what ketosis is, all these exogenous ketones, all these things.
Yes, that's a perfect.
That'd be a good place to start.
That would be a very good place. So, how I usually start with when I talk about ketones, ketosis, ketogenesis, is ketones just like any other substrates like protein, fats, carbs are essentially materials that you can metabolize to provide energy. So your body naturally creates ketones out of fat in specific conditions. Namely, when your body glycogen stores are low and you have low insulin and low carbs. So how do you achieve that? You achieve that by either doing intermittent fasting or on a ketogenic diet where you really restrict your carb intake. So that way, your body is registering that, okay, you need energy.
Sorry guys, we are filming this outdoors in Venice Beach, California, and I think there's a criminal on the loose because this police helicopter has been going around for the past hour.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some background noise. Apologies.
There you go.
Continue.
Yes. So when your body registers that you do not have your fast energy generating substrate, which is glucose, it will start mobilizing your fats, going to your liver, and then produce ketones. So then ketones would enter the Krebs cycle, go through the metabolism and oxidative phosphorylation, create ATP in the same way that glucose would. It's just that it enters as acetyl-CoA on the Krebs cycle instead of glycolysis. So that's a little bit of biochemistry. And then ketosis is a generalized term where your blood ketone levels is above 0.5 millimolar. So that's a generalized consensus of what ketosis is. Means that you have elevated blood ketones, that's about it. Ketogenesis is the process of making ketones, usually in your body by the liver. So the process that I just explained, your fat mobilized into your liver, creates ketones, that's ketogenesis. Now, we go one step further now, we can talk about endogenous ketones and exogenous ketones. Mm-hmm. So what I just described, where you go on ketogenic diet or you are intermittent fasting, you create endogenous ketones. So endogenous means inside, you create your own ketones. Now there is a limit as to how much ketone you can create based on your body's ability, but there is also a lag time before you can create enough ketone to be in ketosis. Mm-hmm. So you have to fast for a couple of days, you have to, restrict your carbs and really deplete your glycogen stores before you create the ketones. Exogenous ketones have been somewhat new in the past 2 decades, I would say. It's when you have external sources of ketones. So that's thanks to technology, we created ketones that are drinkable or edible or, so that directly elevates your blood ketone levels. So ketone-IQ, R1,3-butadiol is one example. Ketone monoester is another example. Acetyl acid diester is another example. And then there is also C6 diester that's also in the market. Ketone salt and MCT, those are the more common products that are out there that could be considered sort of exogenous ketone. Technically, MCT acts as a precursor that sort of elevates blood ketones by converting the medium chain triglycerides into ketones. Ketone salt as well, it does increase blood ketone levels, but because it's often tagged with a salt mineral, either sodium, potassium, or magnesium, you will have an increased salt load if you have too much, or you have GI issue if you have too much. So there are limits of, each product, they have their own strengths and weaknesses on how much ketone levels it can elevate. And it all depends on what your goals are.
So you said that it takes a few days of fasting to get into ketosis?
It really depends on your body. Yeah. Okay. Some people, they would fast overnight and they'll get their ketone levels up to 0.5.
Does that depend on how metabolically flexible you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see, or how keto adapted you are. Some people who have been on ketogenic diet, they have their body so efficient at both mobilizing fat and also creating ketones that even when they're out of ketosis, they'll fast overnight and then the next day they'll be back in ketosis.
Yeah, because that's similar to what I do. I typically do what's called like a cyclic ketosis diet, where I'll intermittent fast, like so from dinner to my late breakfast, which I'll break my fast with. Usually now it's Ketone-IQ, honestly, first thing in the morning with some nootropics. The combination of those two in the morning is like insane. And then I'll have like some upgraded coffee with like some MCT oil, some ghee and collagen. And that's really it until like lunchtime, when then I'll have like some eggs, which is still protein and fat primarily for lunch. And then for dinner, I'll usually have the carbs. So it's like ketosis throughout the day, and then dinner replenish the glycogen, and then start that over again.
That's very interesting.
Would you say that I could potentially be in ketosis throughout most of the day?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the easiest way is simply check your blood ketones, right? Just have a finger prick in the middle of it, in the middle of the day, test your ketone levels. I mean, that's the most objective and accurate way of testing. I do something a little bit different, but similar. Instead of dinner, I would do lunch for myself, because I know my body is not very good at metabolizing glucose. When I have too much glucose, too much carbs, it becomes, I'll become lethargic and all that. So I'll insert some form of carbs during lunch, because I know that at the end of the day, when I finish working, I'll go to the gym. So I'll have that source of energy for heavy lifting or weightlifting. And then I'll deplete that, and then I'll have a non-carb and more ketogenic sort of dinner, or even just skip dinner and just have a protein shake and Ketone-IQ. And then there'll be like 8 p.m. and then I'll fast till the next day lunch. So that gives me sort of that period where I'm, in ketosis. And I did measure my ketone levels before, after that one night fast, and usually it sits between 0.4 to 0.8.
Nice. Okay. So now let's get into the benefits first of a ketogenic diet in general, what it can be good for, who it's for, how long somebody should do it. And of course, this is all going to depend. And then we'll get into benefits of taking exogenous ketones.
Sure. And that's really great question, because you mentioned cyclical ketogenic diet. And I have had a lot of people asking this question when I first started this job and work for this company, and really understanding the science around ketones and metabolism and how would it benefit a certain group of people versus the other. And I think ketogenic diet has been used for almost a century to treat seizures. So we know ketogenic diet have been very useful in therapeutic areas, and Virta Health has been doing a great job illustrating the use of ketogenic diet in reversing diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and losing weight. And a lot of people have seen tremendous results when it comes to weight loss. Now, as you were at Metabolic Health Summit, there were also a lot of physicians who said, cardiologists are becoming more worried and more cautious around ketogenic diet because of the dyslipidemia, where you get a dysfunction in your lipids, like lipoprotein, LDL, the bad cholesterol, it's too high because of your increased fat intake. So that's a whole different issue, because, physicians are now talking about, should we have a different reference range for people who are on ketogenic diet? Should we not have them be in the same bucket as how we would judge the population who are on Western diet? So I think in terms of weight loss, in terms of, anti-seizures, to a certain extent, some people do see the cognitive benefits as well for ketogenic diet. Now, to answer your question, how long would they have to be on it? I think the question is, less so how long can someone be on it for the benefit. It's more about how much do they enjoy that lifestyle. And I think at the end of the day, we only have one life. We've got to enjoy our life as much as we can, but also take care of it, right? So if by being on a ketogenic diet is us taking care of our health or well-being, and if we're not enjoying it, and we have low adherence and we have higher cheat days, that defeats the whole purpose of it. So I would say for people who do enjoy that sort of diet, go on as long as you want, and enjoy the benefits. For those who feel that there is certain challenges that comes with it, that they can't adhere to the diet, but they do have a strong appeal of going onto the diet, and say, for example, for seizures, then they can consider cyclical, right? Yeah. They can consider exogenous ketones to make sure the transition between the non-ketogenic diet period to the ketogenic diet period more smoothly.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about enjoying your lifestyle, because that's the problem with all these diets or whatever. It's they go on it, they hate it, they're just like will themselves through it, which can be okay. Like if you're severely overweight or you have cancer or cardiovascular disease, one of these things, yes, it is good to challenge yourself and push yourself through something like that. But then once you get to a relatively healthy range, if you don't like what you're eating every single day, that can be doing more harm than good, because the mental aspect of it. Like if you, we were just talking with Tasha, she said that when she was over at Wade's house, the bio home, he's got this Kangen water that I don't know everything behind it, but it's like the alkaline or whatever. It's like healthy filtered water. And she thought that she was drinking the filtered water, but in reality, she was drinking the excess non-filtered water for like a week. And she thought that she was drinking the healthy water. And so
she felt better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just because of the brain. Yeah. So like we are the placebo. So yeah, if you're not enjoying how you're eating, and I would think that's causing more damage.
Yeah, for sure. I think mental well-being is very much underrated and not discussed enough. Yeah. And I think the correlation between your mental well-being and your physiology, i.e. your hormones and your brain function and all of that, has already been studied, has already been shown very clearly how close they are related to each other. Yeah. And how your mood and all that get affected by your choices, your behavior, like your lifestyle, your diet. So just because one diet, that is good for you, it's not an all be all. Like you got to know your body well. You got to experience it and see if you actually like it. And third, also assess the objective outcomes from a pure scientific point of view or medical point of view, and then talk to the professionals, your physicians, your nutritionists, your dietitians, your trainers. So,
speaking of the mental benefits of it, and like mental health in general, because I don't really work with anybody who is severely overweight or has cardiovascular disease or epilepsy or anything like that. I work with primarily high-performing entrepreneurs, so they're looking for maximal performance and peak performance in mental and physical ability. Talk to us about some of the benefits for, again, a generally like relatively healthy person, what they can experience mentally and physically.
So we're talking about endogenous ketones or exogenous ketones?
Now let's talk about exogenous ketones.
Okay.
How we can use that.
So I think, because of metabolically, ketones' ability to enter the brain and bypass the blood-brain barrier. Yeah. Versus fat, which because of its size, it's too big to bypass that. It provides the brain with the energy it needs. So the brain uses...
So just to clarify this for people who don't know about the blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
Talk to us just briefly about how ketones or exogenous ketones are more fast-acting.
So basically, because ketones are smaller size molecule and it can bypass that, because there's a barrier that separates, the blood and the brain, and it provides generally glucose to the brain, and the brain prefers to use glucose in general sense. But in some cases where you have low glucose or you have insulin resistance, or of some form of dysfunction that does not allow you to transport glucose into the cells, or you can't metabolize glucose properly, that's where ketones play a very big role. So for example, in neurodegenerative diseases or even traumatic brain injuries, where there is a dysfunction in glucose metabolism, the damage that occurs in the brain, both short-term and long-term, is due to the deficiency in energy generation. Because if you only providing glucose as one and only substrate to generate ATP or energy, if your brain can't use that, or for some reason that mechanism is affected or impacted negatively, then you got nowhere to go. Right.
And what causes that? You said TBIs and some
TBI and neurodegenerative disease. So what we see in TBI acutely, you get a hypermetabolism of glucose. So we saw in studies, they saw a huge increase in glucose uptake within the brain, and also huge increase in glucose metabolism. Now, some studies show that huge uptake of glucose is to quickly create energy to mitigate the damage. But some studies also show that it's actually not being metabolized, but instead being shunted towards the pentose phosphate pathway for recovery. We don't know what the conclusive answer is, but we know that there is a change in metabolism in glucose. But then for weeks and months after, they saw a hypometabolism, meaning a drop in glucose metabolism. And that creates deficiency in energy generation. So that is where the long-term effect comes in. You have the brain fog, it could affect your eye coordination, it could affect your cognitive memory loss, that sort of thing. And what we as a company, we try to apply for a grant with SOCOM, with DOD as well, to look at how this would affect these cases. How would exogenous ketone fit in the gap that glucose metabolism can't fit in?
So essentially, ketones are able to pass through the blood-brain barrier and
provide energy, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So then, in terms of, again, a relatively healthy person who doesn't have any of these issues, how can taking exogenous ketones benefit them physically and mentally?
Okay. So a lot of people take it for just mental focus, mental clarity. They take, like you said, you do it in the morning, take a shot, and that keeps you sort of focused and start your day right and do your thing and organize your thoughts. For me, I take it before podcasts, for example. It really connects my brain and my words. What I think and what I articulate becomes more connected, and as a result, it becomes more coherent, and people find it more much easier to follow.
Yes.
So for me, that's a big part of podcast, is to be able to articulate complicated concepts and make sure that my listeners understand what I'm trying to say. Some people use it as appetite suppressant. So right now we are actually planning a study to look at using Ketone-IQ to suppress appetite, or just in general decrease calorie intake over time, because I think a lot of people anecdotally experience some sort of appetite suppression when they have exogenous ketones.
Yep.
It could be because it is calories. Ketones does have calories, so it could be the calories being taken, and therefore they feel that they don't want to eat as much, but overall the calorie intake is the same. Mm-hmm. It could be some signaling effect of ketones that may actually be related to appetite suppression directly. There is a study that shows the negative impact on ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. Mm-hmm. So that was in ketone ester, ketone monoester. So that has been shown to affect ghrelin, but it will be very interesting to translate that hormonal change into calorie intake in general. So sort of like, you got the theoretical physiological change. How does that affect behavioral change?
Mm. Did you say that there's a study that said that ketones can suppress ghrelin?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yes.
So
if you Google ketone and ghrelin, you should find that paper. There's only one paper.
okay, that's awesome. So this would be a super easy hack for anybody who's sleep deprived, because when you're sleep deprived, ghrelin goes up. So yeah,
that's very interesting.
hack.
I was about to get into that. So the way I was trying to explain the benefit of ketones, I'm going through the day, right? We started in the morning,
Yes.
and then we go to the middle of the day. You want to suppress your appetite. You want to not have that sugar crash, after a heavy meal, and then now we talk about sleep and relaxation. We are already running a study in collaboration with University of North Georgia to look at effect of Ketone-IQ on sleep and relaxation. So we'll have them take Ketone-IQ before they go to bed, and then we'll measure HRV, sleep quality, REM, whatever we can get to measure using wearables. And then on the 8th day after we've collected the data around sleep and relaxation, we'll move on to the effect of Ketone-IQ on physical and cognitive performance, where we'll make them run 5 kilometers and then do a Wingate. And then if they don't puke after that, they are not doing it right. Apparently, that's what I heard. I did get offered to do the Wingate just as a demonstration. I said I'll probably be on, I'll stay as a scientist on the observer side of things.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's very exciting, because I've had clients ask me, they're like, because I teach in general not to eat before bed because it disrupts the quality of your sleep.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to have our digestive system working while we're trying to fall asleep. There are some ways to get around that, using some quick digesting proteins and fats.
That's right.
But for the fact that this decreases ghrelin, so you can just take a shot of this and it will decrease your hunger. And then, so that's at nighttime. And then in the morning, especially if you're sleep deprived, because when you're sleep deprived, cravings go up and you make less
bad decisions.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could just start your morning off with a shot of Ketone-IQ, that instantly puts you a step ahead, as if you weren't sleep deprived. And also, doesn't your body require a little bit less sleep when you're in ketosis?
That's a very interesting question. I've read something about that. I'm not entirely sure in terms of literature as to what we know conclusively so far. But I do feel like when I am in ketosis, or when I take Ketone-IQ for sleep, especially because I like to use it for sleep and recovery. So because I work out later in the day, after that I'll have my proteins and carbs, and then I'll have my ketones before bed. And even though if I sleep for 6 hours versus 8 hours, I do feel that quality sleep, and I don't feel tired the next day.
Yeah.
When you have that grogginess when you don't have enough sleep. So that's a very interesting point. I don't know, honestly, in terms of the data so far. But you brought up also an interesting point that I want to ask your opinion on, which is the fast acting proteins and fats. So some people, some trainers, they're like, okay, you should have casein before you go to bed. You should have whey after you work out, because it's fast acting, and then casein is slow acting. So you sort of build up, have protein synthesis, in bed. In your experience of training and your own experience, like what are your thoughts and what's your take around having casein?
Casein before bed can be great. For most people, I would say that it's not necessary unless you're trying to become like a competitive bodybuilder or something, where you need constant protein and you need to be in that state of anabolism. What I recommend my clients now is not casein, because my clients aren't training for any sort of physical competition. I typically recommend collagen before bed, because that's very easy on the digestive system, and it also contains glycine, which can help you sleep as well.
Yes.
So that before bed, in combination with like a scoop of almond butter and like a drizzle of honey, that's like a really good thing before bed. Easy on the digestive system, helps you sleep. And the honey increases serotonin. Serotonin is precursor to melatonin. Yeah.
But honey also increases, possibly increase insulin as well, because glucose and all that. So that has to be careful not to have too much of that.
Yeah. So it all depends, and that's why nutrition is so individual.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about testing. And so I recommend all my clients take a 23andMe test, so they get their genetics tested. And then we run that through Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who is at Metabolic Health Summit. We run it through her Found My Fitness website, and it gives you a full comprehensive breakdown of your genes. And it tells you like whether or not you're a slow or fast caffeine metabolizer. It tells you like vitamin D, if you need more sunshine or less sunshine, like all these things. It told me that I function well on more carbs than most people, which I've found to be true. I typically eat a lot of carbs, especially when I'm training more. But now that I've decreased my training volume, I have significantly less carbs. And when I take this, I was shocked. My story about this is I took 2 shots before a run, and I never run. Since I got out of the Marine Corps, I almost never run. And I took this before going on a run, and I ran the longest that I've ever ran in my entire life. I ran about 7 miles. Wow. And the most I had run before that was maybe 5, years ago in the Marine Corps. Right. And I just felt amazing. No fatigue whatsoever. I just felt good. I could just keep going. Yeah. I was shocked. Yeah. And I contribute that 100% to Ketone-IQ. Because I literally did not run longer than a mile for years.
How do you come across us? How did your story start?
Paul, I'm going to mispronounce his last name. Yeah. He reached out to me for HVMN products. Yeah. I think he sent me your collagen powder and your MCT powder, which is fantastic. I love those, mixing that in my coffee. And then they came out with Ketone-IQ and sent me a bottle of that. And then somebody else, I forget who, reached out to me and asked if I want to be an affiliate. And I was like, heck yeah, I love HVMN products. And plus the whole, what you guys stand for, health via modern nutrition, that's so important. Yeah.
And it's not the modern nutrition that what people think right now. What they think of what modern nutrition should be is what it is.
Exactly. So I became an affiliate with you guys, and then started promoting HVMN. And you guys are actually a sponsor of the podcast. So shout out to HVMN. Use code Captain Morgan 10 to get a discount on this amazing product here. Yeah. So now let's talk. So we covered some of the benefits of ketosis, definitely the mental clarity, which I've experienced, especially first thing in the morning. We've covered some of the physical benefits. Let's now talk about what we were first going to talk about, the study that you're doing with the Special Forces. Let's talk about this.
Sure. So it started with phase 1 SCTR, where it was, I think, about $200K funding to look at using exogenous ketones and Special Forces in hypoxia, because
in hypoxia
is lack of oxygen, low oxygen environment, and that's very common in high altitude and deep sea exploration. And obviously when you have lack of oxygen, because we know that oxygen is very, very important, and on a normal at sea level we will have 97 to 100% saturation oxygen in our body. That's how important oxygen is, especially for the brain. Because you need oxygen to create energy, the brain needs constant energy, and it uses, in proportion to the size of your body, the brain uses so much energy, right? So when there is hypoxia, when there is low oxygen, you definitely see a huge drop or significant drop in cognitive abilities.
Pause here. This is why if you don't understand proper breathing mechanics, and you're a mouth breather and you're a shallow breather, always breathing into your chest, that can cause cognitive decline as well. So learn how to breathe and continue.
And so when you have lack of oxygen, you get a drop in cognitive ability. So in our first phase of the study, we use exogenous ketones, and as a result, the drop in cognitive ability was halted. So the ability was maintained even at hypoxia. So that was enough to convince SOCOM, Special Command Forces, to give us a phase 2 with a $6 million funding to elaborate that function of ketones in hypoxia. So this time we're actually involving units of Special Forces and operators who are out in the field, who are doing the real deal and really running all these physical and cognitive tests on them when they are in ketosis. And we use both the mask to sort of simulate a 20,000 feet high sort of hypoxic level, as well as a hypoxic chamber that IHMC, our collaborator, built, where you can fit a treadmill in there, and they'll have to go incline for 20 minutes on a rucksack, and then really fatigue them. And then right after that, they'll have to do a shoot simulator. They have to do cognitive tests. We were measuring their oxygen saturation. We were measuring their physiological responses, heart rates, the parasympathetic responses, as well as the more objective measures such as accuracy of the shoot simulator, the reaction time, the mean reaction time, fastest and slowest reaction times, vigilance, eye coordination, and how accurate those are. So all of those sort of came back quite interesting in terms of the data, and that was what we presented at Metabolic Health Summit.
Yeah.
And you were there, and we saw a significant improvement in oxygen saturation up to 7.7% when they are on exogenous ketones in hypoxia. And that is huge, because essentially you are telling people that if you are on exogenous ketones, the rest of the people within the same altitude have significantly decreased saturation of oxygen, but you have 7.7% on average
significant advantage.
Higher saturation. So I believe it was around from 65 to 72%, which is huge. And then that translates into more practical aspect of your function as well.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm very excited to see the final results of that study. All right, so now let's talk about body composition, because there's a big conversation out there on quality versus quantity, calorie counters and this and that. And I think, and I know that let me ask you, if somebody, say we have two identical twins and everything is working, it's like the same person, right? Just two times. So say we have, and they're both live identical lifestyles. Say we have one person eat a diet, same amount of calories, but heavier on the carbs side. And then we have the other person eat the same exact foods, but lower on the carbs and higher on the fats. Talk about what the difference in body composition would be there, if any.
That's a very interesting question, because usually if I'm presented by that question, the easy answer is that depends on the person's metabolism. But obviously you are saying these two people have the exact same metabolism, right? So I think that would depend on the physical activity. So what stimulus are you providing the body to direct these different nutrients into different goals? So that's how I see ketones as well. It's not a elixir, it's not a drug that is specifically switching on or off certain things. It is a substrate where it helps your body respond to whatever stimulus you give your body in a much ideal way. So I believe, for a person with higher carb intake, if both people are focused on endurance exercise, right, then the carb person would undoubtedly build more sort of endurance and more, probably build efficiency in burning carbs and metabolizing carbs. Whereas this other person will have to develop a mechanism in terms of metabolism to compensate for the lack of carbs. Because endurance would probably, over time you need the glycogen stores and you need to mobilize all the fats and all that. On the contrary, if both people are focused on strength training, for example, then whoever has more protein will probably be recovering faster, because you are synthesizing protein to recover the muscle tears that you create from heavy lifting. And the person with the carbs probably have to compensate for that.
So let me ask you this.
Yes.
Say they live a sedentary lifestyle. Say somebody is 30 pounds overweight. and so same scenario, one, their diet is like 50% carbs, 25% fat, 25% protein, something like that. And then the other person, same sedentary lifestyle, it's 50% fat, 25% protein, or 25% carbs, something like that. Would there be a change in body composition, do you think? Sedentary lifestyle, like not changing anything else.
And they're not on any calorie deficit or surplus at all.
No.
Yeah, good. I would say yes.
A change in body composition.
A change in body composition.
How so? Due to the decrease in insulin spikes throughout the day?
It could be decrease in insulin spike, because if you look at Randall cycle, which is, back in, I believe, 1960s, I don't want to misquote it, but the scientists basically proved that if you upregulate glucose metabolism, you downregulate fatty acid oxidation, and vice versa. So if you go up on fatty acid oxidation, you go down on glucose metabolism. So that is a seesaw effect. So when you have more carbs, obviously this will get upregulated, and then this will get downregulated. And ultimately, it's a mechanism to create energy, right? So body composition is more around storage. So which one has more potential to create enough energy and then store the rest, versus not enough energy and then you actually store less fat? I think that is probably in the equation, rather than what you eat in terms of nutrient is what you're going to store. So just because you have more fat doesn't mean that you have to store more fat. It's about, like, is the fat sufficient to keep your energy expenditure enough without storing the excess fat? Or if the carbs is too much, more than your energy expenditure requirement, and then storing the rest.
So in this impossible scenario that is, almost impossible to replicate, you imagine that the person who has a higher fat diet than the person with the higher carb diet would notice better changes in body composition?
See, I don't want to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Because that is an ongoing debate, right?
Yeah.
It's like, people always ask, are calories all the same? Is 90 calories of fat equals 90 calories of glucose? Some really big names says no, and some really big names also have said yes.
Yeah.
For me, I think until I see conclusive data on it, I'm still on the fence on like a very objective scientific point of view. Show me enough data and substantiate it with the right protocol, and then I'll buy it. I think that you probably have a better answer than I do, because I'm more on the theory side of science, but you actually train with people and you can see the transformation of body comp. So in your experience, what do you think? What have you seen?
Yeah, well, we have to talk about quality, because if you're eating primarily fats, but they're poor quality fats, you're going to feel like shit, and it's going to cause massive amounts of inflammation in the body. Assuming that these are both high quality diets. So now I see your position. It's like an impossible scenario. I always say focus on quality and don't worry about the amount of food that you're eating, because most people, once they switch from, especially the standard American diet, which is horrible, and they start focusing on quality, then a lot of times they'll find that they can eat the same amount, if not more, than they were normally eating, and still feel great and notice better changes in body composition. And it goes back to like meal timing as well, like whether you intermittent fast and whether you have your carbs around your workout and how much your blood sugar is spiking throughout the day. So in general, I recommend people do what I do, the fat
Yeah.
in the morning, fat and protein in the afternoon, and then have their carbs in the evening. Again, that's going to depend, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it all depends on the lifestyle and the physical activity, and then you went and say, you know, a sedentary lifestyle. I'm like, they should not be sedentary to begin with. I should have answered that.
Move your body.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, that is not an option. And if you realize, you know, like whenever nutritionists, whenever like, you know, I go to conferences like AHA, ACC conferences, and I see people's presentation around different diets, and you know, they have to abbreviate all these different diets, and standard American diet is SAD. It's just sad.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it, I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And you know, it's the food pyramid is like pretty much obsolete, you know. And
Harvard
yes,
came out with the food pyramid recently, and
a new one.
At the base of the food pyramid, if I'm remembering correctly, is grains.
Okay. Like the largest. Okay.
If I remember properly, don't quote me on this, but I do remember that they recommend it was like either canola oil or vegetable oil as an oil to use. I remember that pretty distinctly. So it's don't trust.
Yeah.
And coming from Harvard too, like that's unfortunate.
That's what I tell people. Like at the end of the day, you know, these big universities. I mean, I come from a few big universities, but I think at the end of the day, it boils down to the person, the scientist, the integrity of the scientist himself. You know, because think about it, how many thousands of graduates are from, you know, one big university, Harvard, Columbia, you know, Yale. There's so many graduates. Anyone can throw the names around, but at the end of the day, if you speak to the specific individual and look at his or her work around the research and the scientific integrity, as well as the philosophy they apply in, you know, upholding the truth, I think that's what says it all. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you guys, audience, you know, when you look at different information and different, you know, just Google or YouTube or whatever, don't just conclude it is good information just because it comes from Harvard, it comes from, you know, Ivy League or Oxford or Cambridge. It could, because we're all humans, we're not perfect. Anyone could make a mistake, anyone could claim something wrongly. Mm-hmm. It's just some people are more confident at claiming something more obscure than the others. Mm-hmm. So do your own research, you know, trial and error with your own body. I think whenever it comes to your own body,
that's important.
That is the most important part. You can go to the best trainers, best nutritionists, best scientists, but if you don't know your body well, they are doing the same thing. They're trial and erroring with your body. But at the end of the day, nobody knows your body better than yourself. So you just need to go out there and try it. I know it's easy for people to say, just tell me what to do. I mean, I want that. I mean, my life would be much easier, or maybe not actually. I got where I am today because I trial and error and I experiment with things. I go out there, take risk, take my chances. You know, I hear something, I do my research. What are the pros? What are the cons? And then I evaluate. Is this good for me personally? Mm. Is it good for my growth? Is it, you know, good for my health? And if it is, let's try it. Give it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months. And sometimes your body needs time to adjust as well. Just because you apply a diet and you don't see results the next day, do not, you know, be realistic about those goals as well.
Yeah.
Like, know that your body does take time to adapt to ketones. Your body does take time to burn fat. Your body does take time to fix your insulin regulation. Because what many people don't know is that if you get diagnosed type 2 diabetes, it's already 15 years in the making. You have been developing that for 15 years, from insulin resistance to all the way to like insulin deficiency. And then you got to the point where your body can't provide enough insulin to compensate for the insulin resistance anymore. And therefore you are type 2 diabetic. But know that it took 15 years to develop. So you can't expect 3 months to go back to perfect health. but it's a work in progress, and you got to start somewhere. And the key is consistency and adherence. That's why, we go back to like, are you happy with this lifestyle? If you're happy, you will do it without even thinking, and you won't even think that I have to do this. You're thinking, I get to do this.
Yep.
And I enjoy this, and this is my life now, and it's so much better than it was before.
That's so important. The distinction between I have to do this and I get to do this. Like, this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
Just being grateful. And I also like that you mentioned trial and error. Like, test it for yourself. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, isn't going to work for the next person. Like, listen to your body. Try it for yourself. Okay, so let's summarize. This has been a fantastic conversation. We could talk for a long time.
Yes.
But for the sake of time,
we'll have part 2 and 3s and 4s.
Yes.
I would love to talk to you once the result from UNG is out on the sleep, relaxation, and cognitive physical. That's because that one is specifically Ketone-IQ, whereas the studies before, most of the studies are being used on ketone monoester, because that has been in the market, that has been FDA grasped for a long time. So it's the most established in terms of research. So now we are trying to get Ketone-IQ in the hands of researchers, and we're excited to see the new data that's coming out.
So that being said, let's summarize.
Yes.
Hang on.
What?
Let me just fix this.
Okay.
So that being said, let's summarize.
Okay, yeah. So that being said, let's summarize. Who is Ketone-IQ good for?
Ketone-IQ is good for athletes. It's good for knowledge workers. That's what we call it. So everyday people who feel that they need that mental boost in the morning, mental clarity, focus. People who feel like they have sort of slight ADHD. They can't focus. They need the quietness, the mental sort of comfort zone, if you would, to really get their work going. People who might have problems sleeping. So this is still anecdotal, like I said. We haven't seen enough data yet, but there have been enough anecdotal data that people feel that their sleep quality increase when they take it before sleep. But the key is take it right before instead of more than an hour, because otherwise you get the energy and mental focus and mental awakeness instead. So those 3 categories are the main categories that we talk about. But then you also get people who are in general wellness, people who know and think that keto may be good for them, but they don't feel like they have the need to go on a ketogenic diet. They just want the ketones in their system. So that way you can have a shot a day just as a wellness sort of shot. Know that it can sort of help your brain health or help aging in general. Because studies have shown that exogenous ketones and ketogenic diet, both arms in the same study, have improved brain network stabilization caused by aging. So as we age, our brain regions start destabilize, and the communication between regions, and that's where the neurodegenerative disease development and all that. So ketones have been shown to improve that significantly, even just with one dose. So people can use that over time, and who knows, we might have a old generation where everything is still very much on point in terms of brain activity and intellectual capacity.
It should be. Yeah, we don't have to decline as we age. Like, that's, like you said, diabetes. It's like 15 years of decline, and that doesn't have to happen. So maybe a better question is, who is Ketone-IQ absolutely not for? Who should not get this?
People who, because so one thing that we notice is that when you take Ketone-IQ, there is a slight drop of blood glucose. So people who have conditions that may worsen if they have low blood glucose, they should consult their physicians first before taking Ketone-IQ. So that's one example. And I think in general, if you have a medical condition that you are concerned about before taking exogenous ketones, granted, this is, is GRAS, generally recognized as safe by FDA. So we have not seen, adverse effect or health threatening effects. But if you are still concerned about your health and your specific condition, then do consult your doctor before taking it.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Sure.
What is, let's say, the one thing that you're most excited for? Could be anything.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get ketones to the level of, say, proteins and carbs, like to really spread the knowledge that ketones is essentially a 4th macronutrient.
Yeah, because this doesn't have any proteins, carbs, or fats.
Yes.
But it's got calories.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if you think about it, when they first managed to synthesize protein or managed to isolate whey and show that whey helps with muscle building and whey helps with recovery. And that changes a lot of things because as we age, we have sarcopenia, we lose muscles, right? So that has a big role in helping improve quality of life. Same thing here. If ketones are being recognized as a 4th macronutrient and being very ubiquitous and everyone can have access to it and it's affordable, it could be just another substrate that you can just have it in your kitchen, but it actually helps you improve your brain power or even mitigate your decline in cognitive ability as you age. So I think that is what I'm excited about because from the data, we know that it's bringing a lot of benefits, right? It's not just because I'm selling something, I'm selling Ketone-IQ or it's because I'm working for a company that sells it. No, I think from a science perspective, we see so much benefit that comes out of it, but it's just the translation. And that's what I'm excited about. My job is that I get to translate what we see in science, in literature, in publication to the market, to the general public, to the masses, and how we word the message around it is so important. And again, come back to how you articulate a concept that is so complicated. People are, oh my God, this is such difficult science. This is so complicated. Just summarize for me, we need that information and that knowledge out there. And we need more people to understand what this is. And that's why we're working with people like you and with the followers. And 1 person spread to 10 and 10 spread to 100. And let's see where this goes. I think that's something that excites me.
Yeah, nice. I like that you mentioned the affordability too, because compared to other exogenous ketones, Ketone-IQ is the cheapest you can get. And not in terms of quality, but in terms of price. Yeah. And so that's awesome that you're able to make it affordable for anybody.
And hopefully we can even go cheaper once we scale. I mean, it's all about scalability, right? I mean, I'm sure when they first synthesized whey protein, isolate whey protein, it was much more expensive.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's super cheap. Yeah. Okay. Last question. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
We covered a lot.
We did.
We covered performance. We covered sleep. We covered brain. We covered diabetes, metabolic health in general. We covered the military side of things.
We scratched the surface on a lot of topics.
We scratched the surface.
Yeah.
I think probably. No, I think we covered pretty much everything we could have covered today.
Good general base.
Good general base, but I think the next conversation I would love to have is in detail discussion on the different protocols of our study using Ketone-IQ and the data associated with it. Then people can actually take that information and apply it. It's like, okay, this is how I'm going to use this, when to use this. And I mean, I guess that could be one of the things that you didn't ask specifically in terms of protocol. And we can talk briefly about it. Take 1 shot in the morning just for clarity.
Yep.
Usually for performance, we recommend 2 servings, half an hour to an hour before you work out. And then you should be able to feel that sort of energy and that clarity. And you can also take 2 right before bed just to see effect on sleep as well. So that's generally the protocol that we give.
Sweet. Trial and error.
Yeah.
See what works for you.
Yeah.
Awesome, Latt. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And such a nice area, and then nice beach just right here, and nice company. And thanks Tasha.
Yep.
You got it.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to do part 2.
Yes, love to.
Looking forward to it. Awesome.